Hey guys, welcome back to Scary Stories with Cy. I'm Cy. So, it's the day after Halloween, for me at least. I think you guys will be seeing this on the 4th. So, I'm all cozied up with my coffee and my Nightmare on Elm Street little blanket shirt. It's not a Snuggie, it doesn't go all the way down to my feet, but it's super comfy. Got it from Spirit, don't judge me. But, welcome to the very first serial killers throughout time. Now, this isn't going to be the only month where we cover serial killers. Of course, there's just so many of them, we could never possibly fit everything into a 1 month thing. So we'll probably end up coming back to them after November at some point in time, but I figured rather than bouncing from radically different topic each week, we can talk about a more specific topic each month and observe a different thing about it each part. So this week, we're going to be talking about serial killers. Next month, we're going to be talking about the haunted locations or mysterious locations. But I guess let's kick it off with a strong one. Arguably the worst serial killer of, well, ever, really. BTK. And while he may not have the highest body count, he is seen as one of the most evil people to ever walk the planet. Now, Dennis Rader, who was the BTK Killer, stood for Bind, Torture, and Kill, was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas on March 9th, 1945, to parents William Rader and Dorothea Rader. He was one of 4 children in a very traditional family. White picket fence, whole 9 yards. For those times, he was a very strict father, but it wasn't like that's just how things were. It wasn't like he had an abusive dad. He had a strict dad, but nothing. He seemed like an overall perfectly normal child. Later on, it is discovered that he did things, but he did get good grades. He eventually went on to college. Technically, he dropped out of said college, but he did go. And then ended up going on and enrolling in the Air Force. Now, Rader's time in the Air Force was nothing really to gawk at. He didn't exactly do anything amazing, but he also wasn't like he just had an okay job. It wasn't like anything one way or the other. But after Rader was discharged, he moved to the city of Wichita, Kansas. Now, Wichita is the largest city in the Sunflower State. He found himself a wife in 1971, Paula Dietz, and I don't feel like she changed her name. I don't know if she changed her name, but yeah. And 2 children. However, unknown to the world just yet, 3 years before the first child, the man that would become one day his father also became an almost boogeyman of Wichita. He was actually called that by a few people that I saw with the interviews, and yeah. His 2 children, one in 1793, a son named Brian Rader, and one, a daughter, Carrie Rawson, in 1974. On a side note, it is believed that his daughter could have been a sexual victim, but that is not confirmed and nothing official has come out of it. And I'm just going to be talking about official stuff today. And trust me, there is plenty of damning evidence on this man that we don't like. Yes, if he did that, that makes everything worse, but we don't need to even consider that to realize just how bad he really is. But the reason that I wanted to mention everything was Carrie. So Carrie has actually gone off and spent her life since then working with law enforcement to assist families displaced like hers was, just kind of helping out with different people that have been victimized and helping like a lot of very good things. But on to her father. So Rader had started off with the Otero family. I was never able to learn if this was an act of passion, like had he gotten pissed off that something had happened and this whatever altercation, argument, you put your fence too far on my side of the yard, led to Raider just, or was it something planned that he had like thought about ahead of time and decided to work towards? Like, it's hard to really say because there was a lot of it was later revealed that Raider, whenever he was a young child, would torture small animals, typical serial killer warning signs. He had a lack of authority, which was very entertaining given the fact that he then went on to join the Air Force. But it just seemed a little bit interesting to me that his first kills were the way that it was. Had it been something that he had decided to do and they hadn't done anything at all, or did he just get angry and kill everybody and then just decide that he really liked it and that's what he's got to do from now on? But I mean, it's common for outgoing serial killers to start off with one killing, just killing one person. But you see, Raider was a bit of an overachiever in the absolute worst way physically possible. His first kill, rather than being just one, was a whole wallop and 4. He started off by killing the parents, Joseph and Julie Otero, and then their children, Josephine and Joseph Otero. Now, personally, I do like the JJJJ option or whole thing that they had going on, like just from a family aspect. That's cute. But now with the rest of the family, he didn't seem to take as long. His whole monicum is bind, torture, kill. And he definitely followed through with that on every person. But it was obvious that Josephine was a particular target of his. I don't know, again, if he went in there with the intention of specifically going after Josephine, or if it was just in the moment, that's how it worked. Because everybody else was found bound and dead, whereas Josephine was hung up. So it's, again, not entirely certain if he either killed her by hanging, basically with strangulation, or if he did the exact same thing that he did to the rest of the family and how his whole thing is, and then hung her up like some kind of macabre art show. But regardless, he had taken out the 4 of the Otero family and then leaving the other children to just find the bodies the next morning. But Raiders' horrifying crime against the Otero family didn't just shock Wichita. It marked the beginning of a way too long, twisted journey to, well, infamy for him. After these murders, he seemed to, enjoy everything. He relished in the fear he was able to inspire. He wasn't just content to simply commit crimes in silence. Instead, he began taunting the police and sending things out and trying to get a hold of the media, revealing the inside of the terror that he was spreading, giving actual information that nobody else could know. Now, he went to a library and he left a letter in a book, placed the book on the shelf, did not take it home with him, called the police, and gave clear instructions on how to find the letter. Now, I was able to find a copy of the letter, and I am going to read it to everybody just in case you are interested in it, but I am going to just give a small little trigger warning here. This is, of course, the writings of a madman. He, throughout his time, the BTK Killer did kill 10 people and caused a lot of damage. So if this isn't something that you're feeling up to, this episode's going to be a little bit darker. But now, going forward with that letter, it reads as follows. I write this letter to you for the sake of the taxpayer, as well as your time. Those three dudes you have in custody are just talking to get publicity. They know nothing at all. I did it all by myself, and with no one's help. There has been no talk either, so let's put this straight. Joe Otero, me, a psycho killer. It is hard to control myself. You probably call me psychotic with a sexual perversion hangup. Where this monster entered my brain, I will never know. But it here is here to stay. How does one cure himself? If you ask for help that you have killed 4 people, they will laugh at you, thinking you're in, or hit the panic button and call the cops. I can't stop it. So, the monster goes on. And it hurts me as well as society. Society can be thankful that there are ways for people like me to relieve myself at time by daydreams of some victims being tortured and being mine. It a big complicated game my friend of the monster play, putting victims number down. Follow them, checking up on them, waiting in the dark, waiting, waiting. Maybe you can stop him. I can't. He has already chosen his next victim, or victims. I don't know who they are yet. The next day after I read the paper, I feel somewhat sadistic, not because I want to be. It's this big game and all over and seeing the children play in the streets. I am part of society, but so different in other ways. The code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. You see, he added again. They will be on the next victim. Yours, truly guilty. Now, that letter is interesting because he says that he's doing everything by himself, which we do end up finding out later is completely correct. But the way that he talks, it's almost like he gave himself a alter ego and like he talks about him and the murdering monster side of him as almost 2 different entities, saying things like, I don't know who it is yet, but he does. So it's kind of an interesting way of looking at it because it has to ask, was it planned or was it compulsory? Because he says that he's watching them, planning them out, deciding what to do next. Did he ever feel like when he first started doing this, did he feel like he was out of control? Because he was talking about how does one get help for this? And I feel like there's a point to that because let's be real here. If he had gone and talked to a psychologist, he's right. He would have either been deemed insane or they would have had no other option but to call the police. And I feel like even if they didn't believe him, they would have no other option but to call the police and be like, hey, and then he's going to prison. It's no, like, as since he committed all of those murders, yes, he deserved to go to prison. But trying to think about things through his perspective, that's not what he was going for. He didn't want to go to jail. So it just kind of begs, was he telling the truth or was he just playing head games? But Raider even came up with the nickname BTK, which, as he mentioned, stood for bind, torture, and kill. Later on, he kind of put a bizarre spin on that and added an alias to it, still using the BTK kind of thing. But he started signing some of his letters Bill Thomas Killman, BTK. A horrifyingly direct description of his methods and intentions, though. But what made Raider different from other serial killers wasn't just his brutality, it was his desire to be known for it. He sent letters to local news outlets detailing his crimes with weird, chilling calmness, like very weird. He described what he had done, often going into graphic detail, trying to prove and get as much information out there as he could because he enjoyed it. And it showed that he enjoyed the fear and confusion that he created inside of the communities. It was as if the murders alone weren't enough. He needed the validation and infamy that came with being recognized as the BTK killer. Now, you'd think someone living like this kind of double life might stand out in the community, might seem anxious or scared all of the time, but Raider was actually the exact opposite. He was a model citizen. He was a church leader, compliance officer, active father. People who knew him described him as quiet, maybe even a bit too by the book. But no one ever really suspected the darkness that lay beneath. So much so that when the BTK killers started their whole reign of terror and the people started finding out about everything, they would go out and call for a security team to be installed, or a security system to be installed. It's logical, makes sense. But that was kind of his whole thing. He was a security installer. Like that was what he did. So he was able to go around, learn how everything worked, learn where he can go and do things, help set up the equipment, and then just kind of show up. But I mean, it's sinisterly genius if it makes sense. Like disgusting, but at the same time, you could tell he was too smart. In total, Rader had a total of 11 victims on the books. There are a couple of possible murders that he didn't take credit for. There was a couple of cold cases that were suspected to be directly connected to him, but nothing concrete. And believe it or not, there was actually a survivor, a man by the name of Kevin Bright. So on April 4th, 1974, Dennis Rader went to the home of Catherine and Kevin Bright, who, despite having the same last name, they were not married. They were siblings. Catherine, age 21, and Kevin, age 19, Rader held them both at gunpoint and took them into the bedroom. Kevin fought back. Now, Rader wasn't used to this, and that actually kind of pissed him off. And during his anger, Rader, well, shot Kevin in the head. But miraculously, Kevin survived. He went and actually got help. And then they were able to get paramedics and get to his sister before she died. But Rader had stabbed her multiple times and she wasn't looking good. She wasn't able to identify her killer before she went into surgery. And it's unclear if she knows exactly who her killer was because unfortunately during the surgery she did ultimately die from the stab wounds that Rader had inflicted on her. But Rader had killed 2 more times before the end of that year. On March 17th in 1977, Rader broke into the home of one Shirley Vane. Shirley was a 24-year-old mother who had been killed in her bathroom. Now, he got lucky with this one because she was she was a mom that was at the house by herself with her and her baby. Her husband was on the way home. If he had been home like not even 5 minutes earlier, he would have possibly been able to have saved her. But unfortunately, he did show up and he found his child in the living room unattended. And he ended up yelling out and eventually wandered around the room or wandered around the house to find his wife dead in the other room. But fast forwarding ahead from that to December 8th, 1977, just a little bit later on that year, he killed a 25-year-old woman named Nancy Fox. This one was a very strong attention seeking. event, because Rader himself actually called the police to tell them about the murders. Now, Rader had done more than just called the police, and when he did, he was descriptive. He told the police what the address was, what he had done, how everything had gone out. But he then did something a little bit more weird. I don't know how to put that, but he wrote a poem that he then sent to the media titled "Oh Death to Nancy." Now, it's a really short poem, but since I read the letter, I'm going to also read the poem for those of you that are curious about it. Again, I do understand that the topic that we're discussing today is a little bit darker, but like I said earlier, viewer, listener, whatever, discretion is strongly advised. So it goes as follows. Oh, death to Nancy. I'm sorry I was unable to tell her. I will remember her and her last line. You see, she was a sweet girl, but she had a big mouth. I had to silence her. But that was not my plan. She was to stay awake, but she did not. Now, she will never talk again. And I will always remember her. I can't stand that. I cannot stand that poem. But it begs the question, what did she know? I personally feel like she figured out who he was. That poem was too. That poem was way too. Like, that wasn't really feeling like a poem. That was feeling like a confessional. Hey, she found out exactly what I did. Gotta go. But again, eh. If that wasn't obvious, Rader was a very sick man who enjoyed hunting the police. Well, he enjoyed the police hunting him, and in a very bizarre way felt like he was hunting the police. He felt like he was smarter, stronger, just an overall better person than anybody at the police. He would try to talk to the police. And while I don't know the validity to this, one former homicide detective, a Tim Relf, said that he would prioritize the news stations that he would send things into for them to read off based off of the ones that he got the best TV signal for. Now, I can understand that for a little bit because you remember those little antennas from way back in the day that like the rabbit ears that you put on top of the TV? That's kind of how I'm picturing it. In different areas, you're going to get other channels more clearer than others. So I guess if you're so obsessed with trying to watch what the police are doing to catch you, you're going to want to watch it in a better quality. So you're going to pick the ones to send it to that are, well, better quality for you. But like I said, now after the murder of Nancy Fox, Rader disappeared for a while. 4 years, actually. It was a long time. Now, while it's not entirely understood as to why he took this break, there are a few ideas. The first one being life changes. He may have just been too busy. I mean, he was doing a lot of things, maybe. Maybe he just, or maybe he didn't feel the need to. Maybe he liked a compulsory thing. Maybe it just went away for a while. The second thought is increased police activity. After the seven different murders he had already committed, he had caused a lot of police attention. He kind of needed to lay low for a little bit, possibly. Now, I say that like confidently, but that's again theorized. And the third theory is the need for control. Now, if you're trying to control a city and how scared they are, how you kill could be just as useful as when you kill. Kind of anticipation kind of thing. So he may have decided to hold off to build that anticipation for the next murder. Keep everyone guessing and on their toes type of thing. But like I said, after he had taken a 4-year break, so After his 4-year break from 1981 to 1985, Rader picked back up on his reign of terror in the city when a Maryland newswinder was murdered on March 27th, 1985. And I may have said that name incorrectly, and if I did, I am sorry. This murder was originally thought to be by somebody else entirely. It didn't fit exactly what Rader had been going for the last 4 years. The woman was older. He had normally gone after younger women. It had been so long that it didn't feel right. So whenever he attacked the 51-year-old woman in her home, it was unexpected. They later found out that Rader had committed this murder when he wrote about it in a letter that he then sent in to the media later on. But in the following year, in 1986, Rader broke into the home of 28-year-old Vicky Wergel. And finally, in 1991, Rader had killed Dolores Davis, a 62-year-old woman. Now, those were all of the people that were confirmed that he had killed. But that was in 1991, and he didn't get caught until 2005. So there's a lot of time there. And it was in 2004. No more murders had happened. And even then, what got him caught wasn't a mistake at a crime scene or anything like that. You would think that like the upcoming in like DNA or something, he would have tried killing one more person. This person got away and maybe was able to identify him. No, it was nothing like that. He was mad. It was his vanity. He thought he was forgotten, and that was just unacceptable. He was upset that it wasn't being talked about anymore. He wasn't the household discussion. It even went so far as the former homicide detective, Tim Ralph, said if he had just sat there and kept his mouth shut, I doubt we would have ever even caught him. Rader started to talk to the police again and made some mistakes. First, he left a cereal box. Get it? Because he's a serial killer. Funny. With the letters BTK on the box. And he left it on a truck in a Home Depot parking lot. Now, it was reported by the person who found it, and the police were able to dig it out of the trash because at first he thought it was nothing really significant, but they ended up finding like a doll and some odd things in there. But the police had gone back to the Home Depot and they were able to find footage of it. And they were able to find the actual footage of a vehicle stopping and somebody getting out of the vehicle and placing the box in the bed of the truck. Now, this is 2004. The CCTV is nowhere near what it was today. Like, it was grainy images from across the area. Like, but it's a start. They now have a vehicle. They now have an area. They now have this is so much more that they had before. And it for the very first time was a lead that they had that Rader had no idea that they had. And then Rader wanted to communicate directly to them through the media. And so he starts sending things into the media, trying to talk to the police. They would talk through code sometime, but ultimately what ended up getting him caught was Rader asked if he can send in a floppy disk. So he sent in the floppy disk and he was asking them if the police would be capable of tracking him from it. Rader was under the impression that the police weren't allowed to lie to him. I have no idea why he thought that the police couldn't lie to a suspect. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But the police told him that they couldn't. And then he sent in a floppy disk to a news station, and the news station figured out exactly what they had, called the police, and the police were down there to retrieve it. Now, for the time, and for somebody who did not know enough about technology at that point in time, he did a lot of very smart things. But unfortunately, the person that was working for the police station was an actual IT expert for that time. So he ended up using what's called metadata, the information inside of the data that kind of tells you where it came from, and a lot more of information that was on the floppy disk, and he was able to track it to a church. And then the church, then it even came with the name, Dennis. Didn't say last name, but it said Dennis, and it listed the church, one of the churches that he worked for. And they then went to that church's website, and up in the top left-hand corner was the president of the church, Dennis Rader. So this alone was starting to look really good for the cops, but they didn't have anything like warrant ready yet. So they went over to the house. And what's in the driveway? The vehicle that they had seen at the Home Depot. Everything is starting to come together, and the police are certain that they got their man. And with that vehicle, along with the floppy disk and the information that they had found, every judge was happy to sign off on a warrant, even if it just meant that they can get to the bottom of this person and move on to the next. BTK had terrorized the city of Wichita for almost 3 decades. And it was finally coming to an end. He was caught, and he didn't, like, normally, whenever a person gets arrested, they lie. They say, "Oh, I didn't do that. That wasn't me. I never killed those people." Not him. He was, "Yep, that was me." Why'd you lie? Why did you lie to me about the floppy disk? He was upset about the fact that he was caught because of the floppy disk, but not that he killed anybody. When he went to court, he was asked how he pled, and he ignored the judge. Like, he would not reply to him. So the judge pled for him of not guilty, so that way they can continue on with the court case. And then Dennis Rader decided that he was going to change his mind and plead guilty. Well, that didn't matter to the judge. They decided to continue along anyways. I guess they wanted to make a example out of him for everything. He did end up, of course, getting convicted and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. To this day, he's still alive. He's in solitary confinement and will probably never see the outside of solitary confinement, but that's okay. He caused a lot of problems, and I think the saddest part about the entire story, though, is the welcome that he got to the prison. When he showed up, it was reported from the cop that had actually caught him, like the cop that had found the metadata, had approached him and said that it was very nice to finally be able to attach a name to it, to attach a face to the name that he had found, to which the BTK killer caught on exactly to what he meant and warned this police officer that if he ever escapes, he is going to kill him and shove a box of floppy disks down his throat because of it. I mean, I guess I understand being angry, but I mean, how could you not think the police were going to lie to you? But they ended up taking him in, and the prisoners all chanted on their doors while banging against the cells, chanting BTK over and over and over again, almost like he had gotten some kind of warm welcome. Thankfully, he's never going to be released. He's gone. And while that problem is in the past, he's still definitely very well known. But that's not always a bad thing. It's important to recognize the things that have happened in the past and kind of pay attention to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. That was pretty much the story of the BTK killer. There's some more details out there, but if you guys have any information, I will of course include sources in my description, and you guys There's a lot of good documentaries. Like there's even some from A&E and Discovery on even YouTube that are actually from their pages that are completely free, and you guys can watch other videos about him. You can see a lot of like actual recordings of him talking about like. There's a lot of information out there. I strongly encourage that you go take a look at it. But with that being said, that's actually where we're going to end this week. So I'm glad you guys stuck around, or at least I hope you did. And I hope you guys like the new format. And I'll see you guys next week to talk about the World's Fair. Well, the World Hotel. But you'll see. See you guys.